folks. So I had a visitor yesterday in the form of Gary, who is bringing some of the stuff down that I've accumulated at Dan's over a long time in terms of swaps and whatnot. So I thought I'd do a bit of a mega video. Big thanks to both Gary bringing them down for me and Dan for holding on to them for so long. So I thought I'd get them all out of the box one by one and do a very quick talk through. So here they are all unpacked. As you can probably tell, halfway through I got a bit bored in terms of trying to fit undercarriage and whatnot. So I've sort of skipped a few in terms of putting them on stands and what. But a very, very quick flick through. First of all, got this lovely code-free Tiger Force Lancaster as done by Dan and then touched up later by Gary, and more about that in a minute. There's my first Vulcan, the famous XH558, obviously the last flying Vulcan. Then behind that we've got a Battle of Britain Ju-88. Then at the front, this absolutely gorgeous Bearcat. At the back we've got a pair of Dragon Mustangs and a night fighting Mosquito. Then the famous Corgi Bitter Lace with a slight damage to one of the engines, you can see. And a lovely Hawker Hunter from the Swiss Air Force. So what I'll do, I'll go through them one by one and talk them through. So first and foremost, the one probably I'm really excited about joining the collection is this lovely Avro Lancaster. And this was originally this aircraft here, which is still going strong, Johnny Walker, with the white tail fins. Very similar to what the BBMF represented probably well over a decade ago now. So I bought this really cheap, probably about 2 years ago. And when I met up with Dan at Duxford, I brought it with me, and he had just recently done a lovely Tiger Force scheme, and I was like, Dan, please could you do it for me? I wasn't that talented at doing code free, so off it went to Dan, and this is how it's come back. So it's representing an aircraft from the Tiger Force, and I believe this is a 617 one now. So initially, and I can't get it off the stand because it's actually stuck onto the stand. If I could go underneath, obviously you can see the code on there now, the NX761. It now represents an aircraft from 617 Squadron, KCE, with the red spinners. So initially this was actually in a slightly different scheme, and Gary picks it up from Dan's because he lives relatively close to Dan. And in the process of having a look of it coming out the box, the decals had actually caught with the polythene, or polystyrene. And it sustained some damage. So I bought some new decals, sent them off to Gary, and Gary very kindly touched up a few bits and pieces here and there and put the new decals on for me. And this is how she's come back. And it looks absolutely stunning in the two-tone black and white scheme. I'll give it a bit of a walk around. Yeah, it needs a couple of horn balances, but there's no big deal on that. I'm sure I can find a few and get them painted up in white. But real beauty. Certainly some, I know Airfix have released a scheme very similar to this, which Gary did, and put on the page, and I think it's got to be a consideration for Corgi further down the line. Now they're doing less runs of aircraft, but yes, it's beautiful. Even as a collector club piece, it might be worth doing, but it's come up really good and really proves if you've got someone who can do code frees, it's well worth investing in. So thank you, Dan, thank you, Gary, really appreciate you both doing it, and it's really going to take centre stage in the collection once she's up. So the next one up is ironically the Avro Lancaster's successor if you discount the Lincoln, and that's of course the lovely Avro Vulcan, and this one representing the last flyer, the Spirit of Great Britain, XH558. An aircraft I see on many occasions, not only as a kid, but also its very final flight over North Weald, which was absolutely packed at the time. And Rafe actually recognised, as you can probably hear him in the background playing football, he recognised this when I pulled it out. So just to sort of go over, it is my first Vulcan, and it's definitely sort of made me want to get more. But there is a number of things on there which are quite interesting to talk about, and this was covered at great length with Michael on the Q&A that we did. So one thing that is quite evident is the weight. So when I picked it up, you expect it to be heavy, and it is heavy, probably the same sort of weight as a Lancaster, but it's clearly made of different materials, because as Michael said, if you put these, you made these a solid die cast, you look at that area there, that would be prone to snapping, there's no doubt about it. So there is some plastic in there, a fair bit of plastic, I think it's fair to say. But it's for logical reasons, and it's a beautiful looking rendition of an aircraft. Yes, I don't think the green is quite right. So I don't think you can see the subtle difference on that Hunter. It's just a shade darker, and I think that could have benefited from being a little bit darker. But it's still a mighty fine aircraft to produce in diecast. And in terms of the size of it, I don't know if you can see my hand in comparison to it. It's huge, absolutely huge. I thought the Sunderland was big, but this is going to take up some even more room in the collection. And this was, Dan very kindly found this for me up near his way well over a year ago now. And it's been sitting in Dan's garage awaiting its arrival to me. And bless him, he hasn't wanted to sell it on or stick some paint on it and whatnot. But the most recent Vulcan, the Waddington wing one, has been really well received. I was lucky to see some pictures of the pre-pro before it went. And it looks stunning then, but the actual release itself is spot on. I think many of the collectors who have got them, I know a few of the guys who've got all four. Chris, who runs a Diecast page on Facebook, and of course Dan, who's got all four as well. And you know, all of them have been open to some forms of criticism. The white one was probably the better received of the first three, the 617 Squadron example. But this is fantastic. Lovely detailing underneath. I love the undercarriage as well, nice and chunky. What it needs to be to hold this aircraft in, there's the Black Panther on the side there. And of course, just a little bit on the back as well in terms of this is the actual Spirit of Great Britain display aircraft representing it in October 2007, before all the weathering as naturally, as natural as it made it. My dad, as part of his Father's Day gift, has just had his name inscribed on the Vulcan as well. So our family name will live on forever. It's now at Doncaster, Robin Hood Airport. Hopefully it's got a better future now in terms of obviously just be a ground runner. But it is much missed. You know, what a great aircraft to hear that howl as it come in at low level. And it was flown more in its last season in a lot more aggressive manner. And, you know, crowds absolutely loved it. But yeah, it's a great addition to anybody's collection. So if you do see one, they're becoming as rare as hen's teeth now. It's well worth investing in. Next up is a staple of the Corgi Aviation range, and that's a lovely Corgi JU88A5 in this case, or the Junkers JU88, whatever you want to call it. And this one's representing an aircraft from around about Ardletag, or Eagle Day as is more commonly known, in August 1940, obviously 80 years ago next month. And of course, obviously COVID has ruined all the celebrations in terms of Battle of Britain air shows, but hopefully the Duxford September show is about to go ahead, so good news there. And of course, obviously the Shuttleworth had their first drive-in air show at the weekend, which was a massive success, which is great for them and great for the scene in general. So get back to this aircraft. So this aircraft, I haven't got the collector card, so I can't go into great detail about it. It's representing an aircraft of one KGR 806 in August 1940. And there was a lot of noise on the Corgi Q&A around about Luftwaffe and expanding that range. And Michael was quite receptive to it because it seems to be a bit of a banker for Corgi. I most recently got the Blitz one, probably about 6 months ago. And that was a great addition. But I'm up to about 7 or 8 of these now, maybe even more. I don't know, I've lost count. In terms of when I come to set up, it'll be a bit more in-depth then. But it's a great model. This is the second Battle of Britain JU88 of technically the free release, because if you include the Blitz one of the winter of 1940. I've yet to get my hands on the very first example. It seems to fetch, sort of £150 plus at times. But hopefully that will join the collection at some point going ahead. But yeah, it's a great model. Lots of stenciling on there in terms of around the hatches. Great detail around the cockpit as well. Join lines are good. It's just a lovely model. This was one that's been sitting at Gary's for near on a year, I guess. And it was very dusty when he first joined the collection. And he's done a lovely job cleaning that up for me. So cheers for that, Gaz. Really appreciate it. But great model to have as part of your Battle of Britain collection. Up next is this lovely Skymax, who are a subsidiary of Hobbymaster, F8F Bearcat. And this represents an aircraft based at the US Naval Reserve at Glenview in the early 1950s. And it's fully tooled up in terms of the missiles, or the rockets, sorry, I should say, and the bombs, as well as a fuel tank underneath its belly as well. For anybody who's been to Duxford, this is a regular displayer, or an aircraft that's put for its paces, mainly at Flying Legends by Pete Kinsey, but also been used as in the Joker slot last year with a Sea Fury. And both those aircraft are the epitome of piston aircraft. And you know, the Stephen Gray's displays are much missed on the circuit. He used to really put it through his paces, and probably his favourite aircraft to display. But what a great aircraft it is as well. And the SkyMax version of this doesn't let us down. I'm keep pestering Noel at Calibre to do a Tiger Cat. So it's the only cat really hasn't really joined the stable yet, and hopefully he will finally relent at some point. But it's a great little aircraft. Now, not massive in terms of size, look quite considerably shorter than a Mustang or Spitfire, but my word, does it really go, and does it howl as it falls out of the sky at high speed. Well, probably using the term falls isn't the best one, but as it comes out of the sky then at high speed. It's a great aircraft. I've got about 7 of these now. This was very kindly traded with Gary for a B-24 RAF Liberator, as I was desperate to get hold of this one. It's a great model, it really, really is. And you know, they fetch a pretty penny nowadays, actually, to be fair. So again, if you see them cheap, get hold of them. You won't be disappointed if you like Bearcats or cats in general, and it really take a nice part in your naval sort of airfare sections. Next up is this RAF Night Fighting Mosquito, representing aircraft TWZ. And this one was traded with Dan for some bits a long time ago. And he's still got another Night Fighting Mosquito, which will come to me at some point, which was traded well over 2 years ago. It's just a case of catching up with him. And as he's going through the renovations, he's got it hidden somewhere. So, nice aircraft. Another one that hasn't yet to join the collection. My Mosquito collection is growing nicely now. I'm pretty certain the new one is the only one that I've yet to get hold of. But you never know with Diecast collections evolving all the time. And that's quite difficult to find nowadays. It sold out pretty quickly. It was the RF 100 range. But hopefully one day that will join as well. But a good addition to the Mozzie shelf. Next up are a pair of Dragon Wings P51s, Ds in this case, representing the same aircraft. So just to show you, so 413926. And that one there has got NI15BP, so representing one that's on the US register at that point. But they are the same aircraft. One's representing a wartime version, and this was a special edition. I'm guessing representing a flyer at some point on the US register. But it's a great way of explaining how sometimes it's really difficult to get schemes right. So the example I used when I did a video on this one, as you can see, I've given up putting the undercarriage on that because it's an absolute pig. Yet the same aircraft in a different colour fits absolutely gloriously. Work that out. But in terms of researching schemes, Lou 4 is the one that often comes up. There's been pictures which are in black and white, which are colorised where the camo's blue, and there's been pictures where it's been camoed in a more olive drab style scheme. And there's no definitive answer, although I suspect it's probably this one. But Dragon sort of clocked this and actually decided to do 2 different schemes, which I think is really, really cool. And it is my favourite mould of P51D. Yes, in this case, it's a pain in the backside. Even with blue tack, it's given up on me. Yet this one from Gary is slotted in absolutely perfectly, and it's beautiful. But the detailing on the Dragons are fantastic, you know, in terms of sliding canopies. Again, a bit of a pain in the backside to put together with all the pingy bits, as I refer to them. But great aircraft nonetheless. And of course, a dying breed. It's such a shame that they no longer make them. So if you do see them, get hold of them because they're an absolute joy. Next up is the Hawker Hunter representing the Patrol Swiss acrobatic team, based at Dubendorf in 1993. On top, this looks like a pretty standard Hawker Hunter in its green and grey camo with the Swiss markings. Nice insignia of the Patrol Swiss on the front of the aircraft there. But this beauty really comes alive when you turn her over and have a look at that. Look at that. How beautiful is that? Hawker Hunter is a lovely aircraft. I suspect the next time we see this will be in 148. But it'll be a decent aircraft to have in your collection. It's quite an old mould now, but it's still a lovely aircraft, a lovely representation of the aircraft. And hopefully we'll start seeing these sort of trickle back onto the display scene after the horrible events at Shoreham, of course, all those years ago now. But the Dutch have been flying them, and I know there's a couple which are under the RAF stewardship. based at Scampton, I believe, which are used for sort of air combat practice and whatnot. So hopefully, sooner rather than later, we'll see this back in the air again. And of course, if you're not on the Facebook page, check out Dave Hunt's lovely rendition of Misdemeanor, an ex-display aircraft on the circuit, which is now unfortunately in Canada. But he's done a magnificent job on that as well. So well worth having a look at that. I've been pestering him that if he ever sells it, I want first refusal on it. But fingers crossed. So, but again, it might be an aircraft well worth doing in 148 to kick off Corgi's new range if they ever decide to do that. So the final aircraft today is this lovely B-17. It's a G with the, obviously you can see the Ching turret now, from an aircraft in the nose art range, and this is a bit of lace. I have this in the Air Force One version, which isn't as good. It has its faults, especially around the cowling, and it's not quite as accurate as this. But this is a great looking aircraft. Yes, it's got a little bit of damage. So this was traded for a Lancaster, an Easter egg Lancaster, which I got, which I've got relatively cheap, and I've traded to Dan. So that's on its way up to Dan. But this is a great bit of kit. So I've got to replace some of the guns in the chin turret, the tail turret, one of the ball turret as well. Not a big job, to be honest with you. It's just one of those things I'll get round to as and when I decide to display it. It's great in its aluminium sort of finish. And its yellow cowlings and whatnot. It's a great bit of kit, and of course you've got the nose art as well, which makes a nice bit to add to your displays. And Rafe, who's lingering in the kitchen, has been pestering me and whispering to me, tell everybody it's my favourite plane, because he loves Sally B. Again, an aircraft which hopefully one day we'll see in 172 scale. But I also have Mi Amigo due soon as well, which will add to my B-17 fleet, which is a very kind gift from Rafe and his mum Sasha for Father's Day. So the B-17s are growing and growing and growing in a collection. Where the hell I'm going to display them is a different matter. But yeah, it's a great looking aircraft. And again, you know, it's getting really hard to find now. And you know, there's been a bit of commentary on the forums about Mi Amigo around this joint here. So if we zoom right in on it, it looks a little gappy, but of course it will do in 172 scale. But the mould is getting older and older, and I know Michael mentioned that on the Q&A with us as well. So I'm guessing it's high on the agenda to do a retooling, because it's a good money maker for Corgi. But we'll get to it one day. But this still is a great rendition, and is the best on the market of its kind. And I guess it does vary from aircraft. You know, you've got very little margin for error around that nose joint. But I'm so looking forward to Mi Amigo joining a collection, which is a really interesting aircraft. I'll definitely do a video review on that as well. And it's also nice to see an aircraft that isn't a 25 mission aircraft. It's something that tells a very personal story about a loss of life and a sacrifice that a lot of young men made to make sure that people weren't hurt in and around Sheffield as well. So looking forward to seeing that joining the collection, and hopefully that'll be relatively soon, end of the month. Right, that's it from me this week. Hope you've enjoyed quite an extensive collection displayed here. Really chuffed to see these join the collection. It's probably about a year and a half's worth of trades and God knows what else that have been hanging around at Dan's. And big thanks to Gary, obviously, for delivering them and taking bits up to Dan for me. And also a big thanks to Dan and Gary for doing this absolute beautiful code-free Lancaster for me. As ever, let us know any questions you may have. The days are ticking down to September the 30th, when the man cave is due to go in at the back garden. I will be doing some live videos on the day for that, and I think we'll have a little bit of fun with it in terms of, you know, you can help me in terms of how I'm going to display this lot, in terms of I'll try and draw up some plans and talk through them and all sorts. So lots of excitement coming in the Stringer household. A big thank you to Dan and Gary. Obviously Gary for delivering all this lot yesterday and taking some bits up. And of course Dan and Gary, because it was a team effort in the end on this, for Code 3 and this lovely Tiger Force Lancaster. And you know, they've done, both of them done a great job. And I'm sure you've seen the pictures on the page of when they've done Code 3s. They are head and shoulders above me. I am getting better, but I'm not at their stage yet. So I do some lovely work in terms of Code 3 and stuff. Thanks for all the love on the page as ever. And again, you know, just to emphasise, thanks for all the feedback around the Corgi Q&A. We should be doing some more going forward. And of course, hopefully another one with Calibre wings at some point as well. and see if there's anything else we can sort of add to that further down the line. But cheers, thanks for all your support, and I'll speak to you soon.